Whew boy, The Last of Us, a game that survived 2 re-releases and got a TV adaptation in 2023. Safe to say the plot, the gameplay and the characters are still amazing and hold up well even after 10 years, which not a lot of games can brag about. The Platinum for The Last of Us Remake is significantly easier compared to the original game. More to that, Platinum for 2014 Remaster is still the rarest Platinum that I have, thanks to multiplayer achievements of course, and the Platinum for original PS3 is no longer available because multiplayer servers went offline. But anyway, it's always fun to live through the journey of Joel and Ellie with remarkable graphics and do the Platinum with much less effort. So, The Last of Us Part 1 has 29 achievements, with the most difficult achievement besides the Platinum itself being Getting to Know You, for listening to all optional conversations. These are easy to miss and there's a lot of them, so no surprise. Comparing to original and remaster Platinums, which have 50 achievements, it is evident that The Last of Us Part 1 Platinum will be a cakewalk. The most significant difference is that there are no achievements for completing the game on Survivor mode, Grounded mode, getting all upgrades, and of course, there's no multiplayer. Also, all achievements from the DLC Left Behind are also included in the main game, so we will need to complete them as well to get the Platinum. With that being said, it is possible to get the Platinum with only one playthrough, which I will be aiming to do. So, without further ado, let's dive into one of the best games on PS3, PS4 and now PS5.
Here, let me engrave a trophy for you. Nobody cares.
Because there's no achievement for playing the game on different difficulties, we'll start on moderate mode, because I'm not really into getting obliterated by every clicker and replaying battles dozens of times. With that being said, we start the game and quickly go through the prologue, trying to hold back tears, again, all the time.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
And get flash-forwarded 20 years later with the world completely going batshit in post-apocalyptic mess. Right after we get out of the streets, we can engage in our first optional conversation with the 2 people standing near the red box.
Better not mention the fireflies too loudly.
And right after that, we collect our gear and backpack, getting the first 2 artifacts, military pamphlet and Boston QZ map. After another optional conversation with Tess, we also get our first Firefly Pendant, which gives us our first achievement, Fallen Firefly, for finding the first pendant in the game. After a bit more talking with Tess and encountering the first infected of the game, Runners, we get Note to Brother artifact and another pendant hanging on the tree, which I had some trouble finding in the first place.
Are you fucking blind? You can't see me!
After getting to the slums, there are a bunch of artifacts to pick up, 2 in the streets and 2 more in the docks after a few human encounters. Fortunately, there are no missable optional conversations here.
Robert.
We deal with Robert and meet Marlene, and there is an optional conversation near some executed fireflies, but it did not work for me the first time, so I had to restart the checkpoint. We get another pendant and conclude the cargo chapter, and finally, real game begins from here. In the apartment, we get another optional conversation with Tess. It's funny how this marked as optional, but you actually need to talk to her in order to progress the game, which makes this conversation not optional. We also get a few artifacts here, and finally we are in downtown Boston, and it's a larger section of the game with a lot of collectibles. There's evacuation leaflet, artifacts, another pendant on the tree, and seriously, my eyesight is not that good for this. Optional conversations, another artifact, and finally our first shift door. Shift doors can be opened only with, well, shifts, and room behind these doors contain a variety of goods, materials, ammo, but most importantly, some shift doors have other artifacts hidden there. Plus, there is an achievement for opening all 13 doors in the game, so here are some Platinum tips. First of all, always carry maximum amount of shifts with you. Don't waste shifts on clickers, and upgrade Joel to have 3 shifts at the same time as soon as possible. This will enable you to open all shift doors during the playthrough. Believe me, if you don't have a shift at the time you get to the door and you don't have the materials to craft it, you will probably need to replay a larger portion of the chapter in order to get the necessary materials, something that can take 20, 30 or even an hour to do. After Joel goes solo on some infected in the building, when the game actually tells us that the playtime is over and you're on your own, the group gets to the subway section where we find an artifact and get to the mall section, another terrifying encounter. On a side note, I am saying terrifying because I don't usually play horror or survival games, and I'm generally very nervous playing them, so actually most of the encounters in this game are terrifying for me. In the mall, we get an artifact that reveals the code for the safe and the safe itself, another collectible. There are 4 safes in the game which we need to open for an achievement.
Snake, are you okay? Snake?
Soon after we get to the museum section of the game, there's another artifact in the truck before getting inside the museum, and we also find our first workbench in the garage. And I have to say, I freaking love how weapon upgrades are designed. Not only the weapons are changing with almost every upgrade, but we also get a cool animation of Joel actually tweaking the gun and changing something. Such details. Much wow. Soon after we get another pendant, which is for some unknown reason is lying under the glass case in the museum, and right after that we get separated from Tess and Ellie for another infected encounter. Fortunately there are only clickers, so we can stealth our way to our second shift door, grab some juicy supplies and get the F out of there to meet the girls and help them beat some infected ass. There are some optional conversations after the fight with both Ellie and Tess before the chapter concludes. And we go into the Capitol building chapter. There, right away, we find some Firefly orders and another pendant. Tess decides to cosplay Gandalf, and after some perfect stealth from my side, we get into the subway again with a lot of small puzzles. We also get an artifact and another pendant there. After Joel gets all...
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever.
We find ourselves in the woods, in the outskirts of Billtown with a lot of collectibles. That include 2 shift doors that I was not prepared for. We get another artifact, the 3rd shift door, and speak with Ellie about video games as an optional conversation. Shortly after, there's a safe, a pendant, a few artifacts, and another shift door that I totally forgot about and didn't have any spare shifts or materials. And thank God, after literally vacuum cleaning the whole area for materials, I have managed to find the needed ones to craft the shift and open the door. Finally, we get another artifact in the house with the infected, shortly before the fridge section, which is one of the coolest moments in the entire game for me. Though it's always funny how Joel suddenly gets infinite amount of ammo when hanging upside down. Maybe that's his superpower, I don't know. After meeting Bill, arguably the best character, oh my god. English is not my first language, just in case. After meeting Bill, arguably the best character in the game, we get to the safe house where we pick up another artifact, the map. In the room at the back, there is also another artifact, a conversation with Ellie and Bill regarding the chess.
Hey, Bobby Fischer, don't touch anything on that board.
And also our first training manual, shift sharpening. And right here we get our second achievement, self-help, for finding the first manual in the game. After picking up one more artifact upstairs, and after a small encounter with the infected, that I totally cleared on my first try by not fucking up the controls, we also find a Firefly Pendant hanging from the lamppost. How did it get there in the first place, I wonder? That brings us to the church safe house with quite a few goodies. We find our first workbench tool. These enable you to further upgrade your weapons. There is also a workbench to try out our new tool and an artifact upstairs. After getting through a graveyard and infected neighborhood, we find another pendant and an artifact that also enables the optional conversation with Ellie.
I just want to say I'm sorry.
The next section does not have any collectibles, but has an awesome boss fight with the bloater. Of course, if you can call it a boss fight, it's not really a boss fight. But anyway, we kill the bloater and get to the end section of Bill's chapter. After some cutscenes, we find an artifact that we can give to Bill, and if we pick up the crumple letter, we get our third achievement, in Memoriam. There's also a few optional conversation. The one with Ellie reveals that she's actually a reptiloid, apparently.
You're doing a good job.
And of course, no wonder she's immune. And that brings us to Pittsburgh chapter, with a lot of human encounters and a lot of collectibles. After defeating the initial raiders, we get to a garage where we have an optional conversation with Ellie, artifact, and a workbench. Upstairs we also get another training manual which upgrades medkits, artifacts, and a workbench tool. And actually you can go back to the workbench and try it out. And also look at this, this is the funniest upgrade so far. Starting from this chapter we also get a new collectible types. After exiting the building we find a comic that gives us our fourth achievement, Savage Starlight Fan. There's also a bunch of optional conversations with Ellie, including her take on stand-up with some cheesy puns.
I walked into my sister's room and tripped on a bra. It was a booby trap.
After grabbing 2 more artifacts and killing all the enemies in the area, and oh boy, there's a lot of them, we can finally explore freely. We find more artifacts, a pendant, and survive the barrage of Ellie jokes again.
Because it's meteor. Oh man, that made me hungry.
There's also a 5th shift door and another artifact hidden behind it actually. After some optional conversations and jokes again, we find another shift door outside, just before the hotel, and also another artifact hidden there. Finally, there's also an artifact in an abandoned cafe, where you need to solve the puzzle. Inside the hotel we find a coffee machine that prompts an optional conversation, get an artifact with the safe code and the safe itself behind the counter that holds 3rd training manual, shiv reinforcement. We get back to Ellie finally, and she's so bored by that time that she decides to attack us with some puns again.
I tried to catch some fog earlier. I missed.
One more human encounter and an optional conversation later, we get to the most terrifying part of the game, the hotel basement. Honestly, this is the scariest part of the game for me, but also one of the coolest ones. So, we get the key card
Top of his head.
and go to the lower floor to start up the generator, and then in the next area we are rewarded with a bunch of collectibles. There's a workbench, there's a comic, a pendant, a training manual, and also an optional conversation with Ellie. In the financial district we get a nice clean... Generally, this section is pretty straightforward. We get into an area, kill all hostiles, and grab artifacts. There are a few artifacts in the first area, plus the workbench, 3 more in the next area with the bank and the shift door in the back of the ration center. In the end, we also get a few optional conversations before going into the next chapter. We finally meet Sam and Henry, and after a cutscene we can immediately grab a training manual to upgrade our Molotovs and get an 8th shift door that also holds a comic book. Finally, we are getting another pendant after a small encounter and also 1 more artifact further on the way. A bit further we get an achievement, Lights Out, for turning off a generator unseen, which I totally did not watch. That brings us to the sewers, where we first scout the boat and get a comic and an artifact, and actually a pendant, yeah. After entering the sewers we find another pendant and another artifact in the locked room. There's also a pendant that is hidden further in the puzzle room, as well as an artifact in the hidden room with some enemies. We also get one of the strangest achievements in the game, that's called Waterlogged, for riding the steel contraption together with Sam and Henry. I have no idea why that particular action got its own achievement, to be honest. But I guess it's alright. We also find a third workbench tool a bit further and a training manual. Upon crafting a reinforced weapon, we also get a geared up achievement for crafting all types of tools. Finally, there are 3 artifacts in the next area. 2 in the area before we get separated from Ellie and 1 in the room with stalkers. Suburbs is a more tranquil area with a lot of optional conversations. Basically, we need to get in every house and check every corner. There are 4 conversations, 2 of which are optional, that lead to Ellie's 5th stake on the pawn book. There are also 4 more artifacts here, a comic book, a training manual and a pendant. And also a workbench where we can test our new tool that we picked up earlier. There's also a safe in the area, and this is the last safe in the game. So as soon as we open it, we get our next achievement, Sticky Fingers. After some sniper action and drama leading to Henry's and Sam's departure, we jump right into the next chapter. Right off the bat, there's a comic book in the abandoned car and the 9th shift door at the dam. We also have to act like a total Sigma male to get the next achievement, Left Hanging. After some optional conversations, we pick up a power plant map, artifact and meet Tommy. There's a bunch of optional conversation with him as well as petting the dog for another achievement that is called Who's a Good Boy.
Good to have around. That's a good boy.
In the dam control room, we also find an 8th training manual, find another pendant and get to use a workbench to fully upgrade our revolver and get the next achievement, Combat Ready. After that, there's a bunch of events that do not have any collectible or missable conversations. We kill the bandits, talk with Ellie, chase after Ellie, kill some more bandits, and get to the ranch which contains a pendant and a comic. After getting to the university, we can immediately turn back and find a comic book. Further, we get to the workbench where we upgrade our bow by just wiping it with a rug. After getting another artifact upstairs, we get back to Ellie. We talk about big horns and shoot a pendant from a tree before getting an artifact at our first electric fence. After starting the generator and passing through the electric gate, we get another pendant, 9th training manual and a conversation about fireflies. After getting to the dorm, there are a bunch of artifacts there and 2 pendants, one of which is dropped by the bloater, so you have to fight it. But it's actually pretty easy now because the game gives you a flamethrower and a bunch of gas tanks to deal with the bloater pretty quickly, exactly like I did on my first try. Yeah. Finally, we get another pendant in the tents right before the science building. Inside the science building, there will be our 9th workbench and a shift door shortly after. This is the most valuable shift door in the game because you also get a training manual and a force penultimate workbench tool. From here, there are no enemies and just a bit of exploration. 4 artifacts, which are 3 recorders and a fungal X-rays, and there's also a pendant. On our way back, we get attacked by bandits and Joel gets an absolutely non-lethal and perfectly sustainable injury that can be patched up by Ellie no problem. During the hunt chapter, we play as Ellie and actually there are not a lot of collectibles there. We get a bunch of items right away in her inventory, which count towards the overall progress. We hunt the deer and find a comic book.
Awesome.
And after meeting David and get attacked by a bunch of clickers in the old factory, we also find a pendant and have an optional conversation with him. After abandoning our horse, we get a pendant in the gazebo and get another comic book a bit further. We kill like a million guys before getting caught by David, and at the same time Joel wakes up and goes on a holy rampage against poor bandits to get info on Ellie's whereabouts.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
We play a bit as Ellie again, where we have another boss fight with David, during which I definitely not cheat by using a photo mode to see where he's hiding. Back to Joel and we arrive at the resort. Now we can gather all the collectibles and follow Ellie's footsteps. We get a lake resort map in our inventory. A little further there's an 11th penultimate shift door in the shed behind a building that also contains a training manual. Finally, after finding Ellie's backpack, we also find a meat ledger artifact. We save Ellie, that actually didn't really need to be saved, and fast forward to... The next chapter is a final stretch of the game that will net us most of the collectible achievements. There are a few artifacts in the beginning of the chapter, a pendant, and a bunch of optional conversations with Ellie. After saying hi to a Salt Lake City wildlife, we also find a comic book in the bus station, and a bit further we get our final workbench tool to get Sharpest tool in the shed achievement. Somebody once told me the world. There are a few artifacts, a workbench and a pendant together with an optional conversation just before we get into the underground tunnel. We can find another pendant just before entering it, and inside we can find our last training manual on the van to get Something to Fight For achievement. After cooking up some mushroom sauté with our flamethrower, we find a comic book, a shift door and a final workbench to get Prepared for the Worst achievement. As soon as Joel and Ellie almost drown 5 steps before the hospital, we get rescued by fireflies. Of course, they turn out to be the bad guys. Or not really, they are actually good guys I guess, but from our point of view they are. Plus, Joel needs to do the setup for the second part of the game, so we start what should be the hardest fight in the whole game. There is a small interlude between the fights where we can find 3 recorders and the final shift door to get Master of Unlocking achievement. And right after that, inside the room behind the shift door, we find the final Firefly Pendant and get Look for the Light achievement. Finally, in the pediatric unit, we find our last recorder for the level before saving Ellie and getting the hell out of Salt Lake City. Certainly, this is not the end, and in the epilogue, playing as Ellie, we also find our last comic book to get Endure and Survive. And of course, shortly after, we finish the main story and get No Matter What achievement for doing it. Whew, that was a good run, but before going into the DLC, I have noticed that there's one achievement that I managed to miss, and it is called Build 'em Up, Break 'em Down, for upgrading and then breaking one of every melee weapon in the game. Honestly, I thought that it will come naturally, but since I usually rely on stealth or guns, seems I have missed a few weapons. Fortunately, it wasn't long enough, and I managed to get the achievement while fighting some clickers in Billstown, and apparently the missing weapon was a baseball bat. So with that out of the way, we can dive into the Left Behind DLC. After some cutscenes, we start playing as Ellie. This section has 4 artifacts, a combination node in the pharmacy, 2 more in the toy store, and the last one in the hair salon. The next section brings us back to Ellie and Riley in the mall. There are not a lot of artifacts, only 2, but there's a lot of optional conversations. The main attraction here is getting achievement by smashing all car windows faster than Riley. It's not hard, but actually quite fun. Back, or probably forward to Ellie, and we get 4 more artifacts to collect here. There's an atrium node, the generator node, the atrium recorder, and finally medical supplies to patch up Joel. Going back to Ellie and Riley, we get a few optional conversations and no pun intended book as an artifact. After reading all the puns available, we get That's All I Got achievement.
Alright, I'm putting this away. Hey, thanks for getting me this.
And shortly after, we get Getting to Know You achievement for getting all optional conversation. There's a lot of get and getting in this sentence. Wow, my writing skills are amazing. This chapter has 3 more mini-games that we need to master, so let's get into it right away. In the arcade, we get Nobody's Perfect by pretending to play a racing game, which is quite fun, and then play an imaginary fighting game to get Angel Knives achievement. Finally, we have to win in a water gun fight, and that's actually harder than it looks. The only tactic, if you can call it that I have developed after a few tries is to actually dodge Riley's stream by strafing and then shoot back at her while she's reloading. When the fight is over, we get the Skillz achievement. Getting back or getting forward, flash forwarding back to Ellie? Well, anyway, the mall get invaded by some infected combined with the raiders, so we have some volatile mix on our hands. We get a penultimate artifact from the dead body, and finally in the duct we get the last artifact of the game. This is it, guys, 97 artifacts, and we got them all to get Of course I missed something. Fortunately, you can check the status of all collectibles from the main menu, so we will get to it after finishing the DLC. Hopefully, it's not a lot. Anyway, we lure some clickers to fight the bandits and get the live bait achievement. Finally, we get to a very hardcore 3-way fight with bandits and infected to save Joel. And actually this fight is harder than a lot of fights in the main game. But when we're done, we basically finish the DLC and we get Don't Go achievement.
What's option 3?
Sorry. Come on. Let's get out of here.
Time for some cleanup, and after checking everything, it seems that there's only one artifact that I have missed, which is right after doing all the punts near the carousel in the DLC. So I boot up the game, and shortly after,
That's embarrassing. How do you do that?
What, whistle? You just...
Oh, okay. You just...
whew, that was a great run, and actually quite easy achievement. But anyway, I had a lot of fun replaying the game, and actually I wanted to do like a small review of a gameplay, of story, sharing my opinion, but I can see that this video is already getting to like 30 minutes, so I'll probably do like a comprehensive review of both parts of Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 in my next video, which will be obviously about Part 2. If you watched until this very end, thank you so much, you have my utmost respect. If you liked what you see, please subscribe, and of course, it's a new format on this channel, so if you have any comments, if you have any feedback, I will be happy to hear. With my future videos, I'll probably try to do it a bit less detailed and a bit more focused on like having fun and getting achievements, so the videos are maybe around 10 to 15 minutes, so we'll see. But yeah, thank you guys a lot for watching, and stay platinum.